All right. Good morning to everyone, and thanks so much for joining our third MCPS summer workshop session, Finding Your Dream Colleges. My name is Macy Veach, and I am the partnership specialist for the Princeton Review. I'm in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. Many of you may or may not have seen my face before, but for those of you who haven't, I have worked for the Princeton Review now for 8 years in a couple different roles. And currently work very closely with Montgomery County Schools to provide resources for college admissions, academics, as well as test prep. Now, my number one goal for today is to help ensure that you have a better understanding of what is going to be necessary for you or for your child as it pertains to getting into your dream college. So before we jump right into our agenda today, I just want to share a couple very important facts about the college admissions process right now. So fact number one is that it has never been easier to get into college than it is right now. Now, fact number two is that it has never been harder to get into college than it is right now. So before you leave the session and you exit in complete confusion, let me explain how these two contradictory statements can both be true in our current day and age. So right now, students have the ability to research colleges, contact colleges. They can even apply to colleges entirely online. So you can talk to an admissions representative from a school that's thousands of miles away without even having to travel there. You can also apply to dozens of schools right from the comfort of your own home. And so it's never been easier to find the colleges and get into a college that you love more than it is right now. Now, on the other hand, the fact is that statement holds true for every single student. So what that means is that the college admissions process is as competitive as it has ever been. So schools are now receiving record numbers of applications. Average test scores and GPAs are increasing, which means that in turn, the admissions rates for these schools are falling. So as I said, it's never been harder to get into almost any specific college than it is right now. All right, so on our agenda for today, we have a jam-packed agenda session. The first question that I want to answer or help answer is, what is a dream college? And then talk about the steps that you need to take to identify what your dream colleges are. And then secondly, we want to talk about, what do colleges want? So in other words, what are they looking for in their applicants? And then finally, we're going to talk about, how do you or your child, if you're a parent on this call, get into your dream college. So we are going to cover what you need to do to submit an application to help you get into your college of choice. Now, if you have questions as we move along today, please pop those into the chat. If they're relevant to what we're talking about, I'll stop periodically and we can take questions, but I have carved out some time at the end as well for Q&A. So there will be some time at the end of the session. And then I'm going to stay on at the very end for any folks who have continued questions and give you opportunities for getting additional questions answered after. All right, so before we get into finding our dream college, I want to start with defining what a dream college actually is. So if you've started your college research online, if you've been to a college fair, if you've toured some colleges, maybe you've discovered that college in general just sounds like an absolute dream, right? But I want to talk more about how to identify what those colleges may be for you as a student or for your child. So before we discuss those colleges and how to identify your dream college, I just want to look at some numbers. So technically speaking, there are over 4,000 institutions of higher education in America where you can go and obtain a degree. Now, that is according to the Department of Education. Now, this, of course, includes all kinds of schools, such as vocational schools and trade schools. So we want to kind of narrow those numbers down and just focus on four-year colleges. So in our book, which is called The Complete Book of Colleges, there are 1,349 schools listed in that book. So even if you narrow your search down based on geography, academic programs, or even the school's reputation, you're still going to have hundreds of schools to choose from. Excuse me. But I want you to keep in mind that no matter how potentially ideal the schools are out there, one thing is always going to be true, and that is that you're only going to choose one school. Okay. And that is why it is so important to think about the choice that you are making. All right, so let's talk about dream schools for just a few minutes. Now, we can tell you what the top dream schools are for college-bound students because we have asked. So at the Prince Review, our College Hopes and Worries survey is a survey that asks almost 11,000 college-bound students and parents about the college application process. And now one of the questions that we ask here is simply, what is your dream school? Now, for students in 2024, here are the top 10 answers. Now, I'll let you marinate on that list for just a second, but these are all a list of really great schools. And there is no surprise here why anyone would want this to be, any of these schools to be on their top 10 dream colleges list. Now I want to show you a list from the parents' top 10 dream schools. Now, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see and to notice that these lists are extremely similar. So among the 12 schools that are listed here in the top 10s, there are 6 of the 8 Ivy League schools, and all of them are highly selective with fantastic reputations. Now, all of this to say, students and parents are both striving and driving toward the same small number of schools. But in reality, your dream school isn't just a consensus dream school. You need to find your dream college. So that doesn't come from just looking at a list. It comes down to finding the schools that are going to be a best fit for you. So a question that we often ask is, does finding the right college campus for you take tons of tours and tons of visits? Well, the answer here is not necessarily. It's more a matter of researching and ensuring that you're creating and curating a list of best fit colleges. Just checking the chat here. All right, so speaking of best fit colleges, let's talk about best fit. What does best fit mean? Well, the best fit school for you is going to mean a few different things. Firstly, we're going to look at being a best fit academically. So a school that is a best fit academically is obviously going to have a great program in a major that you want to study, but it's more than just that. I want you to think about whether you learn better in lectures or smaller classrooms. Think about whether you want to jump straight into your major or if you want to take a wide variety of classes. How much access are you going to need to your professors? And these are all things that you're going to need to consider when you're deciding if a school is a good fit for you academically. Next, you also need to find a school that is a best fit for you socially. Now, obviously, you're going to want to go to a college where you're surrounded by like-minded individuals, but a best fit socially isn't just about having people around you that you want to hang out with. You also need to make sure a college has the support services that you need. Do you have dietary restrictions? Do you want specific activities on campus? Are there any issues or causes that you want to be a part of? And all of these things are going to impact your social life in college. And then finally, you need to find a school that is a best fit financially. Now, this is more than just getting a scholarship or a financial aid package. I want you to also consider how a school is going to set you up financially after college. So what career services does it offer? How much debt are you going to be taking on after college? Where do students find internships? And these are just a few examples of how a school can be a best fit for you financially. So, what should you do to find what schools are the best fit for you academically and socially and financially? Well, you're going to go right to the source. You want to go to people who know what college is like better than anyone else. And that's going to be to talk to current college students. Now, that is what we do. So for our best 389 colleges, we've received feedback from over 159,000 college students about their college experience. Now that's how we create the profiles about each school that you can find in our best 389 colleges book, or you can find for free online on our website at princetonreview.com. So as I already discussed, we also survey just short of 11,000 college-bound students and parents about their college application process for the College Hopes and Worries survey. Now, of course, you don't need to find that many college students from all over the country or thousands of students who just finished the application process. But what you can do is talk to the current college students that you already know. So if you have friends or family members who are currently in college, then ask them how they feel about their college. Ask them what they do on the day-to-day on their campus, and ask them why they chose their college. Another piece of advice is to speak to the college and career coordinators at your local MCPS high schools. They can always give you further advice as well as give you access to some of these books and resources, since we do share them with your local high schools. Okay, just stopping to see if there are any questions, and I don't see any as of now, but again, as a reminder, pop them in the chat if you have them. So students have different reasons for applying to their college, but what factors do they actually consider when choosing a school? All right, I'm going to ask for some participation here. Tell me what factors you would consider or you think that most students consider when choosing a dream school. Let me just put those in the chat. I'll say it one more time in case you missed it. What factors would you consider when choosing your dream school? Okay, so we have diversity, GPA. Someone else said location. Two people say location, reputation, location, cost, and programs, majors available. Give just another second here in case anyone is typing. Programs that are offered, internships that are available. Okay, wonderful. So I heard some really great answers, and there can be a lot of different reasons why a student is going to select a specific college. So let's look at some of the most popular reasons. The first is prestige. Prestige just means, is this a good college? Secondly, programs. So does the school have a strong program? As I already heard in the chat, are there certain majors that are available to students? For this one also, location. Some of you might be wanting to do to attend an in-state college, and some of you might be thinking, I'm trying to go across the country and go far away. So location is a huge factor for many. The next is school spirit. How much are students identifying with their school? Next is friends. Do I have friends who want to go to this school? And then last is family. So did any of my family members attend this specific school? Now, these questions influence most students in deciding what would make a school their best fit. That doesn't mean that they aren't good reasons to choose a school or that you shouldn't apply to a school for these reasons. Now, instead, they should really just be the start, which is helping you research colleges and dig deeper into deeper questions about that school. So this is how you're essentially going to start identifying your best fit colleges. Now, to sort through the reasons that make a school a best fit, you're going to need to put in a little bit of work. So you need to learn about the colleges, and then there are some tasks that you can do that will help you do that. The first of which is to go to information sessions. College admissions officers travel throughout the country. They might visit your high school to give an info session, or they might hold one somewhere near where you live. And now even many schools have virtual information sessions, so take advantage of any of these and hear directly from a school representative. Secondly is an interview. So not all schools require interviews, and some don't even have interviews available. But if you get the chance to speak one-on-one with a representative from a school, absolutely take advantage of that. So ask all the questions that you have. Make sure that you're asking the questions that are going to help you decide if this school is a good fit for you. Next is attend college fairs. So college fairs are a great opportunity to speak to different colleges in one place at one time. So certainly go to any college fair that your school offers, but even look up ones that are nearby or available to you. You can even look at online college fairs as an option, which have kind of become more prevalent recently post-COVID. Now, I know I have personally seen lots of college representatives at local MCPS high schools, in college fairs in places like Wootton, Springbrook, and Montgomery Blair. So we do know that those opportunities are out there for you guys. And then next to last is visit campuses. So go to any campus that you can physically visit and take a tour. Walking around a campus is going to give you a better picture than anything else can. So even virtual tours on school websites are going to give you a sense of what the dorms and classrooms and the dining halls are like with or without students in them. And then finally, call admissions offices. So admissions officers are in the customer service business and you are their customer. They want you to apply. They're going to be happy to answer any questions that you have. So this is especially true if you have a question only you would ask because of your own specific needs, situation, or background. Pausing for questions. I don't see any in the chat, so I am going to keep moving. All right, so this brings us to our next topic, which is what do colleges want? So the short answer here is that colleges want their dream students. Now, of course, it's more complicated than that, and you need to know how colleges view the admissions process. You can more easily find and get into your dream college if you know what they are looking for in a student. So let's look at the college application process, not from the student's perspective, but from the admissions office's perspective. Now, one of the terms that you may have heard is selectivity. Does anyone know what this means? So what does it mean to be a selective college? If you know the answer, put it in the chat. What is a selective college? In case someone's typing. A low acceptance. Okay, we have two people say a low acceptance rate based on schools' percentage of rejection. See, you guys are right on the perfect line. So when a college is selective, that means that it uses an application process to admit some students and to reject some students. So for example, if a school gets 1,000 applications and it only accepts 999 students, well, guess what? It's considered a selective college. Now, you might assume that a selective college has better professors, it offers more competitive degrees, or it guarantees a successful future for its students. Now, while those are all really great characteristics of a school, that is not the reason that a school is selective. Basically, selective schools are just lucky enough to choose a small freshman class from a larger applicant pool. And someone said a good proxy for prestige, but a poor proxy for school quality. And that's absolutely right. And we can expand on that a little bit later. But just because a school is known to be a good school, it does not necessarily mean that it has all of the characteristics that we just talked about. Very good. Thank you so much for that comment. All right, moving forward here. Why are colleges selective? So, well, every school has a select number of spots for admission. So college admissions revolves around how many students need to enroll at a school each fall. So every school knows how many students they're going to accept each year based on previous year data. So just to give you an example here, if a school needs 1,000 freshmen, first-time freshmen at their campus in the coming fall, and they know that only about 25% of the students that they accept are going to enroll, then that college is going to try and accept about 4,000 students. Now, this is going to be true whether they get 4,000 applications or whether they get 40,000 applications. And this is exactly what makes those schools selective. Now, every admissions officer would like to admit more students than they do, but of course, this really isn't the reality. Admissions committees have to find the right students to accept just the number of students that the school can take. So keep in mind that they're not only just selecting the top students, but they want students to be selective of the right type of students across a different number of factors. Now, one of those factors is going to be of your college application is going to be your high school transcript. So if you joined us for our session on the grades that get you into college, this is probably going to be just a little bit of a review for you. But when we think about what application readers want, we often get stuck on the top numbers. And so even colleges themselves report the average GPA of an incoming freshman class. Now, most students will have their GPA reported as both weighted and unweighted by their school. And even when the students don't have both GPAs sent to colleges, admissions offices will rescale those GPAs and put all applicants on a more even playing field. Oftentimes a class rank is included, but not always. I know that in Montgomery County, I could be wrong. I don't think class rank is included. And now these numbers are basically just a summation of your entire academic performance. But college admissions officers don't just see this information on your, on your transcript. They see every grade that you got in every class you took in high school. So your entire high school transcript is going to be part of your application. Now, this is securely sent by your high school counselor to each school. So only the schools that you're applying to are going to see that. But any application reader at any school you're applying to is going to see every grade of every class that you got in high school. That's right. What that means is that anything you did in 9th grade, 10th, 11th, or 12th is going to be seen, and the story of your high school career is going to be told in your transcript year by year. Stopping for a question. So I got this question before. Schools see semester grades or quarter grades. I think it all depends on what your high school transcript looks like. So anything that is going to show up on an official high school transcript from your school is going to be reported to colleges and universities. Thank you for your question. All right, so I want to also mention quickly standardized test scores. So even though the SAT and ACT scores have varying levels of importance in the admissions process now, just depending on the school, all schools that do consider test scores are going to look at them in the same way. Now, to break it down a little bit further, your SAT and your ACT scores are part of the application that readers are going to spend the least amount of time considering. So let's take a quick look at this chart. So every school has what is called a concordance chart, and this is based on the work that is done by College Board, SAT, and ACT Inc., who make the exams. Now, application readers are going to see your test scores. They're going to look at the rating chart and they're going to mark down a rating. So what this means is that an SAT and ACT score is going to be equally considered, and schools can easily compare those scores on the different tests. So this is how colleges and universities will determine how well you performed on these exams relative to other students. And just to finish the conversation here on test scores before we move forward, in this new test optional world, we often do get asked, do SAT and ACT scores still matter? Now, the bottom line here is that 93% of schools are still going to want to see high test scores if they are submitted. Now, college admissions offices are obviously going to rather see a 1,400 than a 1,000 SAT score. But this is why super scoring exists. So what super scoring does is it uses the highest individual section scores for a student from their different test dates, and they're going to add them together for a higher overall score. So what that means is if you did better in reading and writing on one test, you did better in math on a different test, they will add those two highest scores together for your super score. Now that's a big positive for students, because but it also allows colleges to report higher average test scores. So just to kind of sum it up, test optional and test flexible policies allow students to only submit higher or strong test scores to colleges. Now, after a student's high school transcript and standardized test scores are considered, there are some extra, more, I guess, subjective factors that they need to evaluate. Does anybody in the audience here know what other things that schools are looking at other than your test scores and your transcripts? Essay, special talents, extracurricular activities. We have a couple votes for that. Okay, wonderful. So by far, and you can still type in the chat if you're typing, but by far the most important other factor is going to be a student's personal statement and any other application essays. So what this is a chance to see who a student is as a person, as well as to judge their writing abilities. All right. Secondly, admissions counselors also want to see letters of recommendation by your high school teachers, because hearing what a student is like in the classroom is also vitally important. And then lastly, as already mentioned in the chat a few times, extracurricular activities show what a student has done and might continue to do outside the classroom. Now, I'm going to expand on these here in a bit, but all these admission factors come together in what is known as a holistic process, which means that an admissions committee is going to consider everything about a student when they're evaluating their application. So admissions offices really just want to consider you as a whole person when they evaluate your application. All right, and now moving into our last section, we're going to talk about the most important of all, which is how do you get into your dream college? Well, knowing what colleges want out of their applicant is a great place to start when applying to colleges, but now you're really going to need to do some real work to make sure that you can get into your own college of choice. And there's a silver lining here, though, because as I mentioned in the beginning, completing an application has truly never been easier. Now, the Common Application, also known as the Common App, is an application for over 900 schools, and that is going to save you a ton of time. Now, on the flip side, it's much harder to craft that perfect application for each schools, and other students are on an even playing field. So you'll want to be sure that you're still putting in lots of time and effort into your application. All right, so the first step in applying to college is identifying which colleges you're going to apply to. The first step is going to be to always start with best fit schools. So before you consider a school's acceptance rate or their average GPA or even their application requirements, you want to make sure that any school that you're applying to is going to be a best fit for you academically, socially, and financially. Now, the purpose here is not just to make sure you have a positive experience in college, but it's also going to make your application stronger because you're making them for schools where you can show admission committees that you're also a best fit student for them. Now, once you've identified some best fit schools, you're going to categorize them all into reach, target, or likely schools. Now, a reach school is one where either the acceptance rate is really low or your test scores and GPA are well below the averages for incoming freshmen. Now, a target school is one where you're going to be in line with their average numbers, but the school may still have a competitive admissions process. And then a likely school is one where the acceptance rate is really high, or your school, your test scores and transcripts are just well above the average for incoming freshmen. And then finally, you're going to balance your application list. So you want to make sure that your list has a few different schools in each category. And if you've started by identifying best fit schools, then you've already improved your chances of getting into these schools. Bear with me for 1 second. Okay, so once you have made your application list, then you're going to need to organize your applications. Now, more importantly, you should know exactly what your deadlines are for each and every school. Now, not all of them are going to be the same, so you're going to need to plan ahead for these deadlines. First, digging more into the deadlines we just talked about, you might choose to apply to some schools early. So here, you're going to need to know the differences between the different types of deadlines. So I'm just going to run through some of those different types of deadlines here. First is early action. Now, that's an application process where you're going to be able to apply to a school at an earlier deadline, which is usually going to be sometime in October or November of your senior year. Now, you'll learn whether or not you were admitted to these schools earlier as well. If you decide to apply for early decision, that's another way to apply early to colleges, but there's really one big difference here, and that's that you can apply to as many schools as you want with early action, but with early decision, you're saying you're absolutely going to attend that school if you get in. Now, with that in mind, you should only apply to one school early decision if it is your absolute number one school choice. Now, there's also regular decision deadlines, which are just the normal regular application deadlines. Those usually fall sometime in early January. And schools will inform students of their decisions by late March of your senior year. And then rolling admissions is the last one. And that's a process where schools don't have a fixed deadline, but they guarantee to give you a decision within a certain time frame from when you submit your application. Keep in mind also that priority deadlines are given by some schools for things like scholarships or admission to specific programs. So basically, every school gets to choose its own deadlines and its own way of setting boundaries for those deadlines. Yes, there's a question. Can we get the recordings? Yes, we'll send this. I know it is a lot of information here. Let's see. I may have missed a couple questions. Quantify what a balanced list looks like across these three categories. So on the previous slide, when we talked about reach, target, and likely, you're going to be looking at somewhere around 6 to 8 schools total. So you should have 2 or 3 in each category. Just depending on your personal situation. The next one, don't schools have limited incentive to offer aid to students who are accepted via early decision? I think that I can't really speak broadly on this, but I guess I can generally say that it probably depends on the individual school because each college and university is different. We can talk more about that offline if you have further questions, though. All right, we have great questions in the chat coming, and I very much appreciate them. Sure. Next is going to be essays. So in addition to knowing what deadlines that you need to fulfill, you also need to keep track of what you need to do to complete applications by that time. So this is really important. You need to know what essays you're going to have to write for your selected colleges and universities. Almost every student is probably going to end up writing the 650-word Common App personal statement or something similar to that. Now, in addition to that, though, many colleges will require what's called supplemental essays, asking students why they specifically want to attend that school. Or sometimes they have their own topics or crazy subjects that they want you to write about. Lastly, you also need to keep track of all of your recommendations. Some schools will require one, some will require two, and some want them to be from teachers in specific subjects. So you need to know every requirement, and you need to make sure you've asked all the teachers who will be submitting a recommendation on your behalf. Now, as I promised to expand a little bit more on these things, the first part of your submissions is going to be your personal statement or your other application essays if you have those. Now, this is going to be the most work that you will do as you prepare for your application for submission. As you write your personal statement, there are a few things that you want to keep in mind. Your application essay is going to show the admissions committee what makes you different from other applicants. And this is the one place that you get to talk directly to your application reader, and it's going to be written in your own voice. It is called a personal statement for a reason. So your essay really needs to be about you. It's going to be about your interests, your thoughts, and your own personal life. Now, another submission that you're going to provide in your application are going to be letters of recommendation. Now, not every school requires recommendations, though, so before you ask any teachers for letters of recommendation, make sure you know how many you're going to need and if they have to come from academic teachers only. Keep in mind that no matter how many letters of recommendation you submit, they're all going to fit the same purpose. Your recommendations will show the admissions committee who you are in the classroom. And since you're applying to be a student at specific colleges, those colleges are going to have an interest in knowing what you're like as a student. So ask your teachers who know you best and can speak to your current academic strengths. And that's usually going to mean a teacher from your junior or your senior year. Now, one personal piece of recommendation that I want to note here is ask your teachers early and make sure you thank them when you ask them. You should also provide them with some extra information to your recommenders. So it's likely that you're not the only student who's going to be asking for a recommendation. So provide your teachers with an activity list. Tell them why you're applying to these schools that they're sending those letters to. And again, keep thanking them as you do it. Question: for letters of recommendation, what info do we give teachers for them to personalize it to us? I think that you may have been typing this as I was saying it, but yes, any piece of information that you can give your teacher about you, they might not know what extracurricular activities you're in. So make sure that you give them a list of all the activities that you're doing. Make sure that you're explaining and that they understand why you really want to go to the college that they're writing a recommendation for. And if I didn't answer your question, we can further that. Thank you so much. All right, and then the final key component here of your submissions is going to be your list of extracurricular activities. So obviously, many of you have been doing extracurriculars throughout all of high school. You're not going to really be able to add a new activity in your senior year to make it in time for your applications or to make a difference. But just because your extracurriculars won't change doesn't mean that your activity list is settled. You need to know how to present your extracurriculars to colleges via your college application. Excuse me. Now, your activity list is going to show the admissions committee how you spent time outside the classroom. You're not going to be presenting just a list of awards or special credentials. And you're most likely not going to be giving them a pre-formatted type resume. Most college applications have a dedicated space where you fill out a list that have a limited number of spaces. So the Common App, for example, allows you to list 10 activities. Now, you're not going to use 4 separate spaces for varsity track if you did that for 4 years. You're going to lump it together, and you're not going to list individually every role that you've ever played. If let's say you've done theater, you want to make sure that you're combining things together so you have enough room on your application. Now, most importantly, remember that your time outside of the classroom does not just refer to official school activities. So if you have a dedicated hobby, if you had a part-time job after school, or even if you spent your weekends babysitting your younger siblings, admissions officers should know this. How you spent your time in high school shows application readers how you're going to contribute to their campus community in a unique type of way. So a question is asked, does it have to be a school teacher or can it be a music teacher? So different applications are different. Some will require that you only can get references or recommendations from academic teachers. Others may permit non-academic teachers, so you just want to make sure that you know what is required before you get those letters of recommendation. Thanks for your question. All right, we are wrapping up our day. I know we've had a lot of information here, but the last thing I want to talk about and go over is a rough application timeline. All right, disclaimer here, you're going to do more than what you're going to see on this timeline, and your exact timing is going to heavily depend on your own application deadlines. But no matter what deadlines you're looking at, you should always work backward to make sure that you have ample time to reach each deadline. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to work backwards. So let's start with January of your senior year. This is when most regular decision deadlines are going to be. So that is when all of your applications have to be completed and submitted. So if your deadlines are in January, then you probably need to spend a lot of your December reviewing your applications. So what that means is you're editing your essays, you're reviewing your activity lists, and you're making sure that you have answered all the questions on your application. Now, and then most early application deadlines, remember early action, early decision, are going to be somewhere between October and November. So you'll need to make sure that you have submitted everything that you need for early deadlines, which does include getting your recommendations in and checking with the school about your application status. All right, continuing to move backwards into October, this is when you're going to be polishing and editing your early applications, which probably means the final review of your Common App personal statement. That has to be ready before your first application deadline. Now, if you need to have your essay ready in October, that means you need to get a full rough draft by September of your senior year at the latest for all your essays. So this is going to include any supplemental essay drafts that you're required to write. Your application essays are the essays that you will revise multiple times. And this is also the latest time that you will have to ask your teachers about letters of recommendation. And so ideally, you should have completed or have mostly completed at least the first draft of your personal statement by August. Now, you can keep revising it, but it should be more small edits because you'll have more essays to do, like maybe supplemental essays, and you'll need that for each school that you apply to outside of the Common App. So you also, of course, will need to know what schools you'll be applying to before you even begin working on your applications. So, as I said, this is not a perfect timeline for everyone, and it does not include everything that you're going to need to do to apply to college, but it does show you that applying to college takes a lot of time and a lot of work to complete. And your applications cannot be completed in a weekend. All right, we're going to wrap up this session before we do Q&A. Remember, I told you at the beginning it was both easier and harder to get into college right now. Your applications will be plenty of work, but you're also going to be doing this type of work to get into your dream college. Now, with that, I hope today's session was helpful for you. Wish we could have spent more time together, and that you at least have a better understanding of the process for navigating your college application to get into your school of choice. All right, we do have some time for questions. If you have any, feel free to pop those in the chat. If you prefer unmuting yourself and just asking those questions, you are welcome to do that as well. I'm going to go ahead, though, and take the first question. Regarding early decision schools, what is the disadvantage to applying to several? So you'll only be able to apply to one early decision school. So early action just means early applications. You get to know sooner. The advantage to that is, of course, that you have first pick of the spots that are available. Now with early decision, you cannot apply but to just one school, because you are saying that you're committing yourself to that school if you get accepted. Okay, next question. Since essays are a big part of the application, what tips do you have for writing them, especially for people who are not the strongest writers? I am so glad that you asked this question, because we have an entire session on crafting your college application essay, and I believe that is the next session that is coming up. So if you can't attend the date and time, then you can still register, and I will send you a follow-up after the fact with that information. So you get the slide deck and everything. But that session, because I could talk about this for another hour, that session is going to tell you about commonly used topics. It's going to talk about ways that you should be positioning yourself to stand out from other students who are applying. So join that session and you'll get all the information that you could need about that. All right, we do have a student who raised their hand, so I'm going to stop for a second, and you are welcome to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thanks a lot. If a student is an athlete and they're an athlete looking at schools that are both athletically and academically competitive, but they're looking in a school and in a sport that's Division III, so any type of aid would not be athletic aid like in Divisions 1 and 2. What are your thoughts about potential benefits or drawbacks to an early decision? Because there's just sort of a different number of considerations for someone with the athletic component being a part of it, because it's not just about matching with the school for the academic and other reasons you laid out, but also matching with the coach and the team needs and all of those bits. It seems like it might be advantageous, but it also seems like it might be limiting. So I wondered if you had any thoughts about that.
I agree with you on both counts. And I would say that if you are not heartfelt, 100% committed to that school, I would just apply early action to those schools. That would be my best advice, because I do feel that there are so many contributing factors to, there's academics, there's sports, there are all these things that you have to consider. So I would veer away from that unless there is one school that you're just absolutely sure of. But there is no harm in applying to as many as you'd like for early action, and we do recommend that you do that.
And just to confirm, are there schools that only do early decision but don't do early action? Are there some schools that just lean into the binding nature of it so much that it's either early decision or regular? Or do schools generally present all three options if they have any early component to it?
So some of them do rolling admissions versus regular. So, but as far as early action, their policies are all different.
Got it.
I think that generally speaking, yeah, most schools are going to offer as much as possible because it's also beneficial to them, right?
Sure.
To get as many students as possible, yes, but the policies for each school is different. And so while I am not trying to dodge your question, I always revert back to look at your list of schools and try and figure out what their school policies are. That way you don't, you don't want to make that mistake and it be too late and you miss that opportunity. So.
And I don't mean to take up too much oxygen,
Sure.
but just while we're on the subject of early decision, if a student applies early decision, they're accepted. I know that's a binding situation, but if they haven't yet seen the financial aid, and if the aid comes back where the family then determines they can't afford that, how is that reconciled? Because it's binding, but I can't imagine it's binding in an actually legal way. So can you speak about that a bit?
I don't know about the legal aspects of it, but I do know that this is a huge concern, especially there have been some issues this year with the FAFSA, students not getting their information in time. And so a lot of students did not want to make that decision because it is binding. So you have to blindly go in saying, I'm going to figure out how to pay for this school without being able to see the financials. That is just part of the commitment that you're making oftentimes with early decision. So again, I don't know about the legalities of it. If something happens, I'm sure that has happened before, but I don't really know what that specific process looks like.
But ultimately, if you can't afford to pay full freight, early decision carries a pretty large financial risk.
It does, very much so. Yes. Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
I will. Yeah, no problem. I actually am happy to. There's an article that was shared with us recently about this exact subject, and I'd be happy to share it with you all as well about.
Thank you.
And such. Yes, absolutely. All right. So next question that we have in the chat here. I know we're running close to time, so if you do need to exit, you are more than welcome to go ahead and leave. But I am going to go through all these questions and answer to the best of my abilities. Let's see. What is the approximate number of colleges we should apply to with and without the Common App? So the Common App is a set number of colleges. So you can look up online. There are 900 colleges that accept the Common App. So statistically speaking, a majority of the colleges you're applying to is probably going to be utilized through the Common App, right? But there are schools that do not use the Common App. So you should be looking at roughly, like I said, 6 to 8 schools total is a good recommendation. Many of those may use the Common App, but if not, just keep in mind that you are going to have to do multiple applications for those schools. But don't let that be a deterrent for you. A separate application should not stop you from applying to a college of your choice. All right. I think that was actually the last question. I'm going to formally go ahead and end this session and stop the recording. So bear with me for 1 second here.